Like I just said, I've been to every gay pride parade in the last 35 years of my life. I've been ever since a baby, and that's why I'm so messed up. So if you want to have a messed up kid, take your kid to every single pride event possible.
This is what happens.
This is what you want your kid to look like this. This is what happens. If you want a kid to look like this, then take him to a gay pride parade. No, but seriously, I just don't like the indoctrination of the young children because they're so impressionable. I have as many pride parades as you want. But to advertise it to little children, just for me, is a little, it crosses the line personally.
And especially with transgender ideology where, you know, I remember growing up being taught like, hey, you should love yourself how you are. And that was like of the utmost importance was to try to like, oh, build our confidence in ourselves and try to be a good person. And this whole narrative kind of grooming children and the whole idea of a kid being able to be trans, which to me I think is ridiculous. A kid can't understand something like that. It's very harmful and it's very dangerous when you're talking about people mutilating their bodies physically through surgery or even just through the hormones, even puberty blockers. Like, how can you think that it's okay to stop, to halt puberty and that it's going to be okay and that they can just go back to normal after that?
They think it's reversible. Like, that is the biggest lie, that you can just mess up this small window of maturation and somebody can just go back and all of a sudden, you know, have all their male or feminine hormones. No, when you take that, that causes permanent damage. And for me, what I really get frustrated is that it's obviously gender dysphoria. It's a clinical mental health diagnosis. And I don't think there's any mental health diagnoses that are being solved by cutting off your genitals or cutting off your breasts. I would think that that would only cause more mental health issues, but I'm considered a transphobe or a bigot for that, and I'm not. So I've made that clear all episode. But we got to get to our next guest. We now welcome on a lawyer who's taken on some of the craziest cases of all time. He's represented O.J. Simpson, Donald Trump, and even Jeffrey Epstein. He's also a retired law professor at Harvard Law School. Please welcome on Alan Dershowitz. Alan, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks. But, you know, I also represented Bill Clinton and Ted Kennedy. I represented Natan Sharansky. Half of my cases have been pro bono for poor people who couldn't afford to have a lawyer. So I've had a very full career, but it hasn't just been for bad guys.
Of course, of course. Oh, yeah, I definitely want to give you the props. I mean, it's only an hour-long show. I think it'd take days to name all of your high-profile clients. But listen, I know you have a new book entitled The Price of Principle, How Putting Honesty and Consistency Above Partisanship and Hypocrisy Costs Jobs, Reputation, and even friendships. So kind of tell us, what have you lost? I know for you it's considered more controversy for you to basically represent Donald Trump than Jeffrey Epstein. So kind of tell us about the book, and why is that the case in your opinion, Alan?
Well, you know, I've represented mass murderers. I've represented some of the most dangerous and worst people in the world. The only case I ever lost friends over was Donald Trump. And there I was defending the Constitution of the United States, which says in clear language that to be impeached, you have to commit treason or bribery or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And he wasn't impeached for any of those things. He was impeached for alleged abuse of power. So I was defending the Constitution, and my wife and I lost all of our acquaintances on Martha's Vineyard. Caroline Kennedy, the ambassador, the daughter of the president, the ambassador to Australia, looked at me once at a dinner party and said, if I knew you had been invited, I wouldn't have come. My wife was in a gym working out, and some woman walked in and said, oh, that's Alan Dershowitz's wife. I can't stay in the same room with her. It just Larry David started screaming and yelling at me, saying, you're disgusting, you're disgusting. Wow. That's, the kind of intolerance that we see from the woke hard left. And it's not going to affect me. I'm going to continue to represent controversial people right and left. But it really did affect my family, my wife, my children, my grandchildren. And that's just tragically what's happening in America. We're so divided. We're so partisan. You just have to pick sides. And that's just not right.
No, you're exactly right. And Alan, a little bit about me. I'm not just a comedian, talk show host. I'm actually a licensed bail bondsman. I grew up in the bail bond business. And so I've got now, personally, I've been the surety on murderers. And for somebody that, I understand that these people are awarded this by the Constitution, and you are doing your constitutional duty to, obviously represent them. So I respect that as an attorney. As a bail bondsman, why an attorney has to do that. But has there been a client that you've had to turn down and you said, I will not represent you?
Yeah, I turned down Radovan Karadzic, the head of the Bosnian Serbs, because he was a fugitive. And I don't represent fugitives. I operate within the legal system, not outside the legal system. Also, I generally represent people only once. I don't want to become a kind of consigliere to a criminal or a crime family. So I do have rules, but I did represent a neo-Nazi for a brief period of time. He was denied admission to the bar because of his political beliefs. I found his political beliefs reprehensible. If he had been run over by a truck, I would not have shed a tear. But I felt that the First Amendment had to be defended. So I won't turn somebody down because of the alleged crimes that they're accused of. If I were a judge or a prosecutor, I'd be very tough on crime. I am not pro-criminal. I love the police. I never walk by a policeman on the street without thanking him for protecting us. And, I support law and order, but I have a job to do. I'm like a priest. I'm like an emergency room doctor. If they wheel in the head of the mafia who has a bullet in his arm, in his shooting arm, they're still going to take the bullet out, knowing that it might result in them being relieved and going out and doing something terrible. If a penitent comes into a priest and confesses terrible crimes, the priest has to go to his grave with that information. And a lawyer has a job to do, and it's a very important job. And if you don't like what lawyer does here, move to Iran. It's very simple. There are no lawyers in Iran. There are no lawyers in China that defend guilty criminals. There are no lawyers in Russia. But if you're going to stay in the United States, which is the freest country in the history of the world, you're going to have to tolerate John Adams representing the people who were charged with the Boston Massacre. You're going to have to tolerate Ed Bennett Williams and Thurgood Marshall and Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln defended many guilty criminals, including one who he got off by using a pretty sleazy trick. He gave him the almanac for the wrong year and asked him to look at the particular date and to see whether there was a moon out. And he looked at it, and sure enough, according to the almanac, there was no moon. And so he admitted lying, and wrong almanac, there was a moon that night, but he trapped him into admitting that he lied. I don't know whether that guy was guilty or innocent, but Abraham Lincoln did a good job defending him, and I like to try to live by those standards.
Well, that's a really big comparison. That's a great story. I didn't know that. But tell me this: so when you look at Johnny Cochran, he represented. I know you've had obviously a professional relationship with him. For me, my favorite guy as a young kid was Michael Jackson. And I look at a lot of the allegations against Michael Jackson. A lot of them, there's some inconsistencies from some of the accusers with that. I'm saying, and I believe Johnny Cochran, when they go back and they talk to the family members in the estate, the one settlement that I believe Michael Jackson actually paid, it was Johnny Cochran that told him not to do it, and it was the other attorney that advised him that he could have beat it. My point is, what do you think about the Michael Jackson case personally and his legacy? Because I think his legacy was investigated by the FBI for over 19 years, and he was never convicted of a crime. So I think it's kind of unfair, some of the negative legacy that he has.
I met Michael Jackson. I gave him some advice. I liked him very much. I was a terrific fan of his music and dancing. His moonwalking is still beyond belief. I didn't see the case. I didn't see the evidence that would result in proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course you pay off. I have a friend in Hollywood, a woman, a lawyer, who says she writes about an average of $100,000 or $200,000 checks a week to people who come in and pretend to have known a famous person, and says, unless you give us $100,000, we're going to claim they had sex with me and raped me. And, the actors or the producers say, pay the $100,000. It's not worth the publicity, the negative publicity, even if we prove we're innocent. So we live in an age, I wrote another book called, Guilt by Accusation, the difficulty of proving innocence. Myself was falsely accused of having sex with an underage woman who I never met. She's finally come forward and admitted after 8 years that she may have had a case of mistaken identity. Yeah. That is, she had sex with somebody, but it wasn't really me. She admitted that she may have made that mistaken identity after 8 years of putting me through being called all kinds of names and being attacked. Finally, she's, come forward and told the truth. And I appreciate that she did finally. No,
and that was a huge allegation. And that's one thing I do respect about you, Alan, is that you actually handled the tough questions. You even bring it up yourself, and you've had some of the worst allegations.
Look, I've had sex with one woman since the day I met my wife. So I'm very proud of that. I'm not a flirt. I'm not anybody who hugs people. The reason they couldn't successfully go after me is I have nothing to hide. I say, let everything be released. I waive all my right to privacy. Every deposition, every videotape, everything should be out there because they will all prove my innocence because I didn't do it. I had nothing to do with it.
No, and I mean, like I said, I think you've had a lot of validity in your claims, but the problem is with the association of Jeffrey Epstein, and with obviously that reputation, that you're fighting an uphill battle. But I want to show, we saw this one clip, and I just want to get your opinion on it. So if we can show that, I want to show Alan this short one and just kind of get your opinion on what this clip is about.
Okay. That was in my wife's calendar. My wife scheduled a massage. If you think my wife scheduled a massage with an underage sex slave, then you'll believe anything. No.